Well, it wouldn't be a true return to YouTube without a few technical difficulties, so welcome back to part 2 of my spiritual journey and my spiritual awakening. Thank you so much for being here. I left off in the last video talking about how I found the local crystal shop that really became instrumental in my spiritual awakening journey, and encourage you all to go find a community or a mentor or a place where you could ask 1,000 questions, because that is what I did. I found my first mentor, Delilah, at this local crystal shop, and she was incredible. I went to her with any questions I had, any spiritual craziness that I was going through. She always had an answer and was also able to confirm things that I didn't actually tell her in a couple of different sessions. But I ended up going to her so often that she was like, you know, you can just come here and talk and you don't have to like get a reading or whatever. You can just ask me things. And that's what I did for literally, I think, a couple of years while I was gaining my own trust in myself and going through sort of the end of this huge awakening that I was going through. After finding the local crystal shop, I started to really believe that I was going to be able to do this work one day. I just didn't know how I was going to get started, what I was going to do. I was still really sick towards the end of high school and was thinking about like, where am I going to go to college? Am I going to go to college? Will anybody accept me with all of these health problems that I was having? I was still able to keep pretty good grades throughout all of this, but I was still sort of in this phase of like, there was a lot of uncertainty going on, and I wasn't sure if, you know, I didn't really think I was going to have much of a future, to be completely honest. I got to a point where I was taking, I think it was upwards of like 8 to 10 prescription pills a day, not including what I would take when I actually had a migraine come on. So the prescription medication was meant to be a preventative for getting migraines and things like that, but what it actually did was it caused me to have a lot of other health issues. And I remember being 18 years old, I'm in my last year of high school, and I started having tachycardia, which is an elevated heart rate while I was at rest. So a normal person's heart rate is anywhere between 60 to 100 beats per minute, depending on how healthy you are. The lower the number is, but when you are tachycardic, you have a resting heart rate that is really, really high. So I'm 18 years old, I have a resting heart rate of 115 to 120, which is not normal. And I remember going to, I think it was Northwestern in Chicago, to meet with these heart specialists because I was having palpitations and these symptoms that were causing other things to kind of happen. And I had to wear a Holter monitor for, I think it was like a week, to figure out what was going on. I met with surgeons. I can't even believe that this happened. I met with heart surgeons at 18 years old at Northwestern, and I was like, what can we do to like fix this? You know, I'm having these really intense like palpitation symptoms and my heart rate is really high, like what's going on? And they were like, I mean, we could go in and operate on your heart. And so at that point I was like, I'm 18 years old, am I really gonna have heart surgery for something that could be caused by all of these medications I'm on? I decided as a completely last ditch effort, last resort, to go and try acupuncture. I honestly did not think acupuncture was going to do anything for me. I was really skeptical that acupuncture was not going to work because I had actually tried it years before, in the midst of being in and out of the hospital, where, you know, I was getting constant blood draws to do testing and figure out what was going on with me. So I was already feeling kind of like picked on almost with the experiences being in the hospital with all the needles, and just like my arms were usually just like covered in bruises because of IVs and blood draws, and it was terrible. When I first discovered acupuncture, I was not ready to let go of my chronic illness, and I was not ready mentally to do the things that I needed to do to heal. And I also just was not in a great mental place, obviously. So the first time I tried acupuncture, I went through the whole process. I got the needles in and I cried on the table for the entire session and felt awful. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. This sucks. I hate this medicine. Why would they try to stick needles in somebody and think it would help them? The blah blah, you know, I'm 16 at that point. I hated it the first time I tried it, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. Well, fast forward to when I'm 18 and I went to Northwestern, talked to these people. I was like, God, maybe I need to just try it one more time. Like, I didn't really give it a shot last time. I was scared of the needles. I was scared of being in more pain. But I was like, at this point, I don't have anything to lose. Nobody can help me. I might as well just give it a shot. So I went back when I was 18. This is years later. And I'm like, let's see what you got. And I ended up meeting my other mentor for acupuncture, and she was able to give me an actual reason and a word, a diagnosis, a pattern that was occurring for me that was causing the migraines and the depression, and all of it was very interconnected. And even though I didn't understand what she was talking about when she said I had liver qi stagnation, it didn't matter, because at that point I had an answer to what was going on with me, where all of these doctors and headache specialists and whatever were just saying, we don't really know what's going on. It could be your hormones, it could be this, whatever. She was able to give me an answer to why I was feeling so awful, and that was enough for me to be like, let's try this. Like, let me put my all into this and see what happens. I went to treatment for, pretty consistently for, I feel like a year or so. I think in the beginning I wasn't going as consistently as I should have, and something was delayed because I didn't really have a full recovery of my symptoms until I was about 20-ish. And I remember going to acupuncture consistently, like twice a week for a while, and then once a week for a while. So I was really getting to understand the medicine a little bit, even though it sounded crazy to me at the time. But I was starting to see little things improve. So instead of having, like, my hands used to shake like crazy all the time, and I'd have to have somebody else take a video or photo if I wanted one, or if I needed to take one of something, because my hands were so shaky. That was one of the first things that went away. I was experiencing nausea in the morning almost every day. That also went away. And so over the next 8 months to a year, I started to notice all of these symptoms go away. I was still getting migraines, but not to the point where it was daily. It started to become longer and longer stretches of time where I would go without getting a migraine. And suddenly it was once a week I was having a migraine. Then it was only twice a month. Then it was only once a month. Then it was, sometimes I'd have a cluster of them here or there, but it started to become like longer stretches of time. And between that and herbs that I was put on, I was able to, which do not do this unless you are being supervised by your doctors or an acupuncturist or both, but I started to reduce the prescription medications that I was on, and that also helped me with the other symptoms I was experiencing, like the tachycardic heartbeat. That started to go away as well. So I reduced my prescription medications, and I was starting to have these longer periods of time where I didn't have migraines. And at that time I was enrolled in a local community college and was going to school for chemistry. I was really set on doing stuff with chemistry because I loved it and I was very good at it. And I started to have these moments where I was like, I am getting better. Like, I was able to function, I was up, I was moving, and within 8 months or so, I was 80% better, which means that I was still having migraines sporadically, but I was functional. I was getting up, I was going to college, I was making friends again, I was able to kind of have a social life, and I went through this experience of feeling like I was given a second chance with my life, basically, and became so incredibly grateful towards my acupuncture mentor and my acupuncturist, because she was the only person that was able to like show me a clear path forward. It's not something that is for everybody, and I understand that, but acupuncture literally saved my life and gave me my life back. And if you know now, I am a licensed acupuncturist with a master's of science in acupuncture because of this whole experience. That path was very interesting as well, which maybe I'll touch on that a little bit, but I began functioning again, going back to school. I started to bond with the teachers and the professors and the people in my class, the classmates that I had, and really enjoyed being there again, being able to have this time where I could like be a person, basically. I know that sounds crazy, but I had this renewed sense of life, and I started to really think about, after I was recovering, I guess, how can I use this aura seeing ability to help people? Something that I noticed when I was recovered and recovering and going through those stages was this internal need that I felt to help people, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. So I remember being at my parents' house still and being like, I want to get an apartment, I want to do this. I just had this huge feeling that I was supposed to be pushed to this new phase of my life, and I moved out, I got my own apartment, I was on my own, and that is when my spiritual journey like completely took off. I began meditating daily, and I didn't know how to meditate, so I would literally just sit for like 10 to 15 minutes and try to clear my mind, and that's what I thought meditating was, until I started working with I was like obsessed with trying to figure out who my spirit guides were and how to work with them closer. And at this time, again, I was working with angels, or trying to, and I became introduced to the Ascended Masters, which was very interesting. I didn't even know that Ascended Masters were really a thing. I really only knew about spirit guides and about angels, archangels, things like that. One of my first experiences with an Ascended Master was when I was in my new apartment. I remember sitting on my couch and going into meditation and trying to basically ask for like help from them. I would protect myself, ask to only be connected with higher beings or people of the highest good, highest light for myself, blah, 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 that whole thing. I remember connecting to this old energy, and I was like, who are you? And I saw the name spelled out LAO TZU, which is pronounced Lao Tzu. I think it's TZU is Z in Pinyin or Chinese. I started working with this guide who goes, meditation isn't just about clearing your mind. Meditation is about your focus and not being able to be easily pulled out of this state that you get yourself in. And I'm getting this clairaudiently, so I'm just going with it, because this is one of the first experiences where I'm really hearing spirit or a guide or anybody. And he goes, I'll never forget this. He goes, it's based on concentration. Let me show you an example. And all of a sudden, my fridge starts humming. Somebody walks in, I can hear somebody walk in to the apartment, like out the like entrance area of the apartment, because it was this like 2-story complex I was in. I heard somebody come up the stairs with their keys jingling. I was hearing other stuff. A train started going by. Like, it was like boom, 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 4 different things to kind of distract me and pull me out of this meditation. And I knew he was testing me, so I stayed as focused as I could. And after about 30 seconds, obviously the train was still going by, but everything else had faded, and I just heard him go, good, that was very good. And I was like, am I being trained how to meditate right now? Like, it was one of the coolest experiences I've had, being able to work with him. So I didn't know later on that Lao Tzu actually is a prominent figure that we learned about in acupuncture school. He is like the father of Taoism, and he has a bunch of really inspiring quotes. He's very esoteric in the way that he talks about things, and so I didn't even know who that was or anything until later later, I'm in acupuncture school and we're talking about him, and I was like, did I work with him before I even knew I was gonna be in acupuncture school? It was very crazy. This began a period of time for me where I really started to dive into meditating every day. I was trying to figure out, like, what can I use this aura seeing ability to, like, how can I use this to help people? And I have journal entries where I'm like, I just feel this need inside of me to help the world, and I like so dramatic, but I could feel it. I felt this pull to make a difference and help people with this gift, because I actually was able to look at it like it was a gift now, because I was out of this crazy tornado of pain and able to kind of be a real human again and a real person. This is in like 2015, 2016 at this point. I started doing these aura drawings for people, and if I can, I'll try to include one somewhere on the screen, and if I can't, then maybe I'll post it on like as like a post on the community tab or something. But I started doing aura drawings for people in these Facebook groups that I found. So I found this psychic medium intuitive practice group where you would do practice readings on people. I remember putting a post out on one of these Facebook groups and not expecting anybody to be interested or like comment on it or anything like that, and I got a bunch of people that commented. So what I would do is I would draw like the head of a person, and then I would draw whatever color I could see, and I only could see the very fine outline of the person's aura through pictures for some reason. I was having like a hard time figuring out how to see more distinctly through pictures, but I remember the first couple were just like awful. They were just like stripes of color, or like I would just see like yellow, and then I'd send it to them and be like, there it is. And then I started to get more into it, where I would have people send me pictures, and I just started to slowly open up to what I was able to see, which was a very cool process for me to go through, because I was really using my intuition in a way that I hadn't been able to for a long time. The drawings completely evolved. And if I can find these drawings, maybe I'll make a separate video on the evolution of like my abilities and aura seeing and everything, because I began opening up so much that I started to be able to see through a picture more of what I could see in real life. That was what was the main problem, was I didn't know how to translate what I was able to see in real life into picture form. So if I stared at a picture long enough, or I looked at the person long enough, I could start to see their energy, but it wasn't as strong as seeing someone in front of you talking or doing something. It was just easier in person. So when I started to kind of get better at feeling into these pictures and looking at these pictures, I began to see all different types of layers, and it started to look more like how it did in real life for me. Through that, I began to pick up on spirit guides for people, which was a crazy process. I was driving down to visit my boyfriend at the time's family. We had like a 3-hour drive in the car, and so I brought these colored pencils and this notebook that I would carry around with all of the drawings, and I was doing a drawing in the car, and he looked at me and he was like, so you're not picking up on like people's spirit guides or anything in these pictures? And I was like, challenge accepted, let's see if I can. So I did, and I was able to pick up on people's like guides, groups of guides. It was usually more than one that people would have, and I would send them this information, and they would be like, oh my gosh, this sounds like somebody that I'm working with in meditation, da 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 da. It was just this really weird process of opening up my awareness to what I was able to do and using it, and starting to actually get feedback from people helped my confidence a lot. And that is how I started to do these aura readings and aura drawings. At this point, I'm going to the crystal shop all the time, and they know me by now by name. Like, I'm friends with the owner, I'm friends with Delilah, obviously, I'm friends with all the other workers there. And I looked at her and the owner, and I was like, can I do readings here? And she was like, sure, if you can do a practice reading on me and nail it, I'll let you. And I was like, oh God, I have to do a tryout to work here, which is great that they vet people, obviously. But I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I've never done this in person before. What if I'm wrong? And I remember doing the reading for the owner, and it wasn't even an aura reading. Technically, it wasn't like a drawing or anything. It was just, what could I see, what could I feel, and what was I hearing? And there was one buzzword that I said to her that resonated so much that she started dying laughing, and she goes, that is how I know you're legit, because nobody knows that about me. Not even anybody that works here, not my family. And I was like, okay, like great. And so she goes, if you can show me an aura drawing of my aunt, I will set you up, we'll get you started on Saturdays. You can price them at whatever you want, and we can see if there's any interest. So I'm like, okay, cool. I do the reading for the aunt. She cries during the reading. I give her my cute, silly little drawing of her energy, and she walks out of the room and she goes, she's legit. Get her hooked up on a Saturday. And I was like, all right, here we go. I started doing $10 aura drawings at this crystal shop, and the first day I was so incredibly nervous that I overthought everything I was getting. You're sitting down with a stranger, you're supposed to tell them about their life. I was freaking out. I'd never done it before. I remember overthinking every single piece of information I was getting, and it was a terrible first day. And that's all I'll say, it was awful. I remember this one woman came in who was extremely spiritual, and I saw it in her energy, so I was telling her that. I was telling her about her guides, and she was my first ever reading. And I remember feeling like I had done such a terrible job with the reading that I was like, she's never gonna come back. I'm not gonna be able to do this ever. This sucks. I was being very hard on myself. I remember Delilah went out to smoke a cigarette or something, and she came back in, and she had the woman's drawing, aura drawing, in her hands. And I was like, she left her she dropped her drawing in the parking lot and like didn't care. And I remember feeling so bad about myself and my abilities and being like, I'm a fraud, I suck at this like Delilah's wrong, the owner of the shop is wrong, everybody's wrong. I just was so down on myself. The next week, I have like 3 readings. I get horrendously sick, and I have a cold, and my nose is stuffed, and I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I have to go do readings today and I'm sick. But it ended up being one of the best things to ever happen to me. I go to the shop, they're like, why are you here if you're sick like this? And it was just a cold. So I was like, I didn't want to call off and disappoint everybody and blah, blah, blah. So I go in, and the sickness taught me not to care about the information I was giving to people. I didn't overthink it. I didn't have the energy to overthink the information I was getting, which ultimately taught me to just trust what I was getting and to give it and not overthink it, not censor it, not anything. And I had the best day of readings, and I had a renewed sense of self-confidence. I was doing readings there for, every weekend for a long time, and I started to get tips from people, so I bumped my prices up. My drawings became a little bit more clean and crisp, and people started to come all over to get readings from me. This one woman drove up from Indianapolis to get a reading. She loved the readings so much that the next weekend she brought her entire family up to get readings from me, and I became booked out and started to like really gain traction as a reputable aura reader in the area. And I also began to experiment with like Reiki practitioner training, and so I went through my Reiki 1 and 2 certification, which blew open my mediumship abilities, and it just all kind of started to build on itself. But that was really the beginning of the spiritual awakening, was my recovery from my health problems that led me to being able to help people and do this as like a real job eventually. long story short, to kind of wrap up the last several years, I began doing more mediumship work. I was picking up on people's loved ones when they would come in and get aura readings. Sometimes people would carry the grief that they were feeling in their first layer or two. So I'd pick up on the grief, and then I'd pick up on the person that they were grieving. And they would come through with messages and things like that. And I was doing kind of a mix of psychic and mediumship work in these aura readings. I began doing house cleansings as well, but my abilities just started to expand at a really rapid pace because I think I was so ready to do something with spirituality, and I had done all of this research beforehand that I was ready. I began entering the online space in 2018. This was, I think it was around 2018, where I was asked to come and do my first ever real photography studio cleansing, which was my first ever video on YouTube. Please don't go back and watch it. I set my iPhone up and I wanted to record the experience just so I could have it for myself later to like look back on, for like a book, or like just basically for documentation for me. I remember recording that, and going through that whole experience was really crazy. I knew what I was doing because I had cleansed houses before for friends and neighbors and things like that, but this was the first time I was getting paid and also needing to actually like move a spirit on. That was my introduction to house cleansings, and then I began doing more of those literally just from word of mouth. People were finding me, and that's kind of how the readings started to work as well, where people were hearing about me from friends or friends of friends, and then they were coming to me at the crystal shop or coming to me to get readings. So I moved into the online space, set up my own website, and then started to figure out how to do readings online. I began with email readings, aura readings, where I would do an aura reading or drawing for somebody. They would send me a picture, I'd do the reading, and then I'd send them back like a whole email write-up, basically. That ended up becoming, I mean, that was crazy because I was starting to connect with people from all over the world and really understanding that like, this is something that could really spread if I took it seriously. So again, I was kind of word of mouth by that point. I was kind of uploading YouTube stuff, but nothing was really gaining traction at that point. And then stuff did start to gain traction. And then I'm connecting with people through email readings. And then I'm doing YouTube lives. And then I'm doing more house cleansings. And it all just started to kind of move very quickly. And it was a little overwhelming, but at the same time, I was very excited to be able to help people. And when I was on YouTube originally, I was continually going through like these really intense life experiences. So that's why I would post and then I'd dip off for a few months, and then I'd post and then I'd dip off for a few months, because I was still going through these mini transformative processes. That's kind of how we got here. I mean, I skipped over some spiritual things that happened, like with my mediumship development and mentors and stuff, but that's because I want to do videos on those topics. But I do hope this helps you along your own spiritual awakening. One thing I want to say is that you're going to have probably one big spiritual awakening in your life, and then you're going to experience little ones along the way that push your beliefs, that push your abilities, that push your trust in yourself to the next level. So just because I'm talking about my one big spiritual awakening doesn't mean that I haven't had other small ones along the way. And if you want a video on that, I can make one on that. But that's pretty much how I got to this point. I did end up going to school for chemistry, and then I got my master's in acupuncture because that was life-changing. So I am an acupuncturist as well as a full-time like reader. So balancing both of those things has been very interesting, but I've dedicated my entire life to energy because I believe in this, and I really think that it's transformative and a really incredible medicine and an incredible path to kind of go along. I hope this gives you a little bit of hope. I hope this helps you along your own spiritual awakening. Obviously, make sure that you're going to get checked out if you're having any physical symptoms, but these are some things you can expect. It's going to feel really difficult, and finding meaning and purpose in what we've gone through is the biggest thing on your spiritual journey and your spiritual awakening process of how can I be of service to others? How can I help other people? That's kind of the point of this whole thing. So I hope this helps you. I will be posting more videos regularly because I finally figured out an editing system that works for me. If you have any questions, let me know down below. Make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notifications so you get a notification for the next few videos that I'm going to be posting. And I will see you all next time.